They called her the most beautiful bride in the Ottoman Empire. They forgot to mention she was also the most dangerous. Inside the harem of the Ottoman Empire, there was one woman every sultan feared. She didn't beg for power. Power begged for her. Her name was Melek of Circassia, and she was the empire's most dangerous secret. In the endless corridors of the Topkapi Palace, behind silk curtains, beneath the scent of rosewater and death, her name was spoken like a prayer and a curse. Even centuries later, no historian can agree on who she truly was. A concubine? A witch? Or perhaps something far older, a being who learned to turn beauty itself into a weapon. The year was 1656. The Ottoman Empire stood at its golden peak. Wars were won, sultans were praised as gods, and inside the gilded harem walls, hundreds of women fought invisible wars of survival. The harem was no paradise. It was a cage made of silk. Behind every smile hid venom, behind every song, ambition. And then, one winter night, the palace gates opened to receive a new gift from the north. A Circassian girl, 17 years old, wrapped in furs and silence. Her name was Melek, angel. But there was nothing angelic about the way she looked at people. Her eyes were the color of mercury. Her skin had no shadow. When she walked, even the eunuchs bowed without knowing why. The Valide Sultan, the mother of Sultan Mehmed IV, called her the Pale One. She warned her son not to look into Melek's eyes for too long. But the Sultan did, and from that moment he was lost. He summoned her to his chambers that very night. The girl did not tremble, did not blush, did not kneel. When he asked if she knew why she had been brought before him, she said calmly, "Because you dreamt of me before I arrived." The Sultan laughed nervously. "How could you know my dreams?" And she whispered, "Because I dreamt them first." That was the night the palace began to change. Within a month, Melek rose from a nameless slave to the Sultan's most trusted confidant. The other concubines whispered that she had bewitched him. He refused food from anyone but her. He slept only in her chamber. He even ignored the Valide Sultan's counsel, an act no ruler had ever dared before. In the official records, her name never appears. But in the Sultan's private notes, later discovered in the palace archives, a chilling line is written. She does not seek the throne. She seeks eternity. Melek's chamber became a place of mystery. Each night, servants carried bowls filled with silver liquid, mercury, into her room. They said it was part of an ancient Circassian beauty ritual. But one servant who peeked through the curtains claimed to have seen her standing naked before a mirror, pouring the liquid over her arms, as she whispered in a language no one understood. Her skin shimmered like metal. The next morning, that servant was found dead, his body twisted, his tongue blackened. The physician said he'd swallowed poison, but no one believed it. The Sultan began gifting her treasures from every conquered land, emeralds, pearls, and diamonds from India, yet she never wore gold. Gold, she said, belongs to the living. I prefer what doesn't breathe. Soon the palace noticed something stranger. She didn't age. While other concubines wilted like flowers, Melek remained the same, untouched by time, flawless, cold. One eunuch later wrote in his memoirs, "Thoughtful to look at her was to remember that beauty can kill." But power in the palace was never eternal. The Valide Sultan, the empire's true ruler, grew restless. She summoned Melek to her private chambers. Melek arrived wearing a white silk gown and a smile that made even the guards step aside. The Valide asked, annoyed, "What have you done to my son?" Melek replied softly, "Nothing. He simply saw what he was meant to become." The Valide's hand trembled on her cane. "And you have bewitched him. You will be gone by morning." Melek smiled again, and the air grew cold. "If I leave, the empire leaves with me." That night the Valide ordered her execution, swift, bloodless, silent. But when the guards entered her room, they found Melek sitting before a mirror, brushing her hair. She turned to them and said, "Do you see it too? The face behind mine?" Then the lights flickered, the mirrors cracked, every candle went out at once. When dawn came, Melek was gone, her bed empty, her mirror shattered. All that remained was a silver stain on the floor, and the faint scent of jasmine and metal. The Sultan fell into despair. He refused to eat, to sleep, to rule. He sat before the cracked mirror for hours, whispering her name. He ordered every blacksmith in Istanbul to forge a new mirror, hoping to summon her reflection again. When they finished, he stood before it and wept. And then he saw her, just for an instant, behind his own reflection. Her eyes, her smile, her hand reaching out from the glass. The Sultan screamed. Days later, his mind broke completely. He declared himself married to the Silver Bride. The court removed him from power, calling it divine madness. But before he was dethroned, he left one final decree. Let no mirror ever stand within the palace walls, for she lives in the reflection. From that day forward, mirrors were banned from the harem. Every shard of glass was shattered, every reflective surface covered in cloth. But still servants claimed to see her, in water, in metal, in the eyes of the Sultan himself. Years turned to decades. Each new sultan inherited not only a throne, but a haunting. During Murad IV's reign, an earthquake struck the palace. When workers entered the damaged harem chambers, they found a wall of melted glass, as if something had passed through it, and beneath it, a faint inscription carved into the marble. "I dissolve, but I do not die." No one could explain how ancient mercury was found pooled beneath the floors, nor why the same scent of jasmine lingered for weeks. A court historian from 1730 wrote, "They say the spirit of the mirror bride still walks these halls, seeking her reflection. And every sultan she touches loses his mind, his love, or his empire." When the empire began to decline in the 19th century, superstitious whispers returned. During the reign of Abdul Hamid II, strange things occurred in the palace again. Mirrors fogged without heat. Servants heard a woman singing in rooms long abandoned. One night, a visiting French ambassador reported seeing a figure standing over the Sultan's bed, a woman in white, her hair floating as if underwater. When guards rushed in, they found nothing, only a thin line of silver across the pillow where her hand had been. In 1912, when the Ottoman Empire was collapsing, the palace archives were opened for the first time in centuries. Among the dust and forgotten documents, a sealed box was found, marked only with an ancient symbol, a crescent entwined with a serpent. Inside were letters written by several sultans, all addressed to the same name, Melek. The letters spanned over 200 years. Each one began the same way. You came to me again last night. Some spoke of love, others of nightmares. One sultan claimed she told him the empire would fall not by war, but by reflection. That one day, the Ottomans would collapse under the weight of their own vanity. The final letter, dated 1908, simply said, I saw you in the Bosphorus. You smiled, and the sea turned silver. In 1998, during a restoration project in the old Sultan's bathhouse, archaeologists discovered a sealed marble door. Behind it was a forgotten bridal chamber, perfectly preserved. Hundreds of candle stubs covered the floor, all burned halfway and melted into the tiles. At the center of the room stood a mirror, large, circular, rimmed with silver serpents biting their own tails. Its surface was blackened, like the skin of something burned alive. Inside a small bronze chest they found a lock of black hair and a handwritten note. She was not killed, she dissolved. Tests revealed the hair contained traces of mercury, but no human DNA. The mirror was transported to the Istanbul Archaeological Museum for study. 3 days later, the curator, Dr. Selim Kara, reported seeing a woman's reflection moving independently behind the glass. He described her as a living shadow with eyes made of liquid metal. A week later, Dr. Kara vanished. His office smelled faintly of jasmine. The security footage cut out at midnight, replaced by static and a woman's faint laughter. In 2016, forensic historian Dr. Aileen Erton reopened the case. She studied Ottoman myth, alchemy, and royal genealogy for years before discovering something astonishing. There were no burial records for any woman named Melek of Circassia, but there were references in an old alchemical codex, the bride who feeds on silver. According to the text, the ritual Melek performed was called Simya-i Zerin, or the alchemy of dissolution. It was said to merge the spirit with mercury, granting immortality at the cost of humanity. The process required the presence of a mirror, a drop of royal blood, and a vow spoken before death. Let me dissolve, but not disappear. Dr. Erton proposed a shocking theory, that Melek's ritual had succeeded. Her physical form died, but her consciousness became bound to reflective surfaces. In essence, she achieved what the alchemists called the living reflection. Shortly after publishing her findings, Dr. Erton received an anonymous package. Inside was an antique silver hand mirror, engraved with Ottoman motifs. When she examined it under light, she saw faint letters etched beneath the handle. For A.E. I've been waiting. She stored it in her lab. The next morning, the mirror was warm to the touch. By nightfall, condensation formed inside the glass, as if something were breathing behind it. That same night, her assistant found her collapsed at her desk, pulse weak, eyes open, whispering one word: Melek. She survived, but when she woke, she didn't recognize anyone. She spoke fluent Ottoman Turkish, a language she had never studied. And when asked what happened, she simply said she wanted to see herself again. In 2023, during the full moon of spring, the Bosphorus shimmered silver once more. Satellite images showed a strange luminescence spreading through the strait. Fishermen claimed to see a woman walking on the water, her gown trailing behind her like smoke. Phones captured brief footage, blurred, surreal, a silhouette glowing faintly white. Authorities dismissed it as a light reflection. But one image, enhanced by analysts, revealed a face in the waves. The same face from the 17th century portrait hidden in the Sultan's ring. Melek of Circassia. 2 days later, a museum security guard was found dead near the sealed chamber. No wounds, no struggle. Just a thin silver line drawn across his lips. Mercury poisoning, said the report. Impossible, said the doctors. There was none in his system. That week, the museum's cameras recorded something chilling. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the mirror began to hum, emitting a low frequency that distorted the air around it. The glass rippled, and then from behind the reflection, a hand pressed outward, pale, delicate, leaving a silver print before fading back into darkness. Scholars today still argue whether Melek was real or myth. But there's one undeniable fact. Every empire she touched eventually fell. The Sultan who loved her went mad. The dynasty that silenced her collapsed. And every historian who studied her reflection vanished, one by one. They call her the dissolved queen, the woman who turned her body into metal and her soul into eternity. And maybe that's why her curse feels so modern. Because we too live surrounded by mirrors, in screens, in cameras, in every reflection that stares back when we least expect it. And maybe she's there too, learning our faces, waiting for someone to look too long. They say if you stand by the Bosphorus at midnight and whisper her name 3 times, the water begins to ripple. And if you don't look away, you'll see her, a pale woman in white, her eyes shining silver beneath the moon. She will smile, and when she does, your reflection will no longer move with you. Because she never begged for power. Power begged for her, and it still does. In 2024, a private art collector in London purchased a small silver mirror from a black market auction. It was labeled Origin, Topkapi Palace, 17th century. The collector hung it in his gallery. Guests admired its craftsmanship, unaware of its past. That night the alarms went off. When police arrived, they found the collector's body lying before the mirror, his eyes wide open, lips silvered, hands reaching toward the glass. Behind the reflection, a woman's face was faintly visible, smiling. The mirror was confiscated, placed in a sealed crate, and shipped to a government archive. During transport, the truck driver reported hearing from the cargo hold. The audio log confirmed faint breathing and a female voice repeating a single line. "If I die, your empire dies with me." The truck crashed 2 hours later. The mirror was never recovered. Some say it sank into the Thames. Others believe it dissolved, like she once did, into mist, into legend, into the silver that binds her to us all. And maybe tonight, when you check your reflection before bed, if your breath fogs the glass without your lips moving, you'll know she's there, watching, not dead, not gone, just waiting for someone to remember her name. Melek of Circassia, the cursed bride of the Ottoman Palace.